Standing at the Kampala garage in September 2020, Charles Olim, better known as Sipapa, donned bright yellow NRM overalls flanked by youth waving the party's flag. 2 years later, the man who once posed for photographs with President Museveni was in Luzera prison, charged with masterminding shillings 1.6 billion robbery against South Sudanese nationals. The hack from ruling party mascot to the accused in a high-profile criminal trial makes Sipapa a textbook case study of the criminal government supporter phenomenon. Sipapa's alignment with the NRM was never a secret. His uncle described him as the strong NRM supporter, and his social media feeds regularly displayed him in party colors. The connection was personal as well as political. In November 2019, the Uganda Media Center confirmed that President Museveni had met music promoter and entrepreneur Sipapa, using the encounter to urge youth to back the government. To the casual observer, Sipapa appeared to enjoy the warmth of the ruling establishment. But within the party itself, senior figures were alarmed by what they saw as a criminal hiding behind the NRM brand. Retired Lieutenant General Proscovia Naluesio, one of Uganda's most decorated female officers, declared bluntly, Sipapa is a thief who still uses NRM association to commit crimes. She claimed he led a 30-strong gang that broke into homes to steal electronics, adding that she had personally worked to have his security withdrawn. The general's intervention confirmed that Sipapa was viewed inside the NRM not as a useful mobilizer, but as a threat to needing to be neutralized. Neutralization was urgent because Sipapa had launched a series of violent attacks against the political opposition. In multiple incidents before and after the 2021 election, he drove his convoy to the headquarters of the National Unity Platform, that's no, in Chamutra, where he fired live bullets at the gate and into the air. No publicist, Joel Sonyonyi, accused him of repeatedly provoking and injuring party supporters, while no affiliated lawyers refused to represent him, saying he had terrorized their movement. For a time, Sipapa operated with de facto impunity. Police escorted him from the scene of the Kamoja chaos rather than arresting him, and he reportedly traveled with military-style bodyguards. Did Sipapa also turn on fellow NRM members? The available court and press records contain no charge or credible report of him physically assaulting, robbing, or threatening an NRM cadre. His violent acts are directed almost exclusively at opposition supporters and ordinary citizens, a pattern that highlights how his aggression was mostly channeled toward perceived political enemies. While that selectively does not make him any less dangerous, it does underscore that the NRM brand was his shield rather than his target. For years, that shield appeared effective. The observer noted that even top-ranking cops fear him. They don't know how he acquired armed state security and concluded that Sipapa was untouchable. This maneuver of protection cracked only when he robbed a well-connected South Sudanese businessman. Within days, police used iCloud signals to locate stolen iPhones, raided Sipapa's home, recovered US $70,000 and other exhibits, and arrested him. The contrast was stark. Earlier episodes of road rage and assault elicited little more than a threat to arrest him. This robbery against a victim with national connections triggered his swift capture. Sipapa did not escape justice. He was formally charged with aggravated robbery and money laundering, remanded to Luzera prison, and in 2025, forensic experts began testifying about the chemical substances used to render victims unconscious. His trial is ongoing and multiple bail applications have been denied, the most recent in December 2024. The state has, at the procedural level, placed him before the courts and assembled a detailed evidence-heavy prosecution. What lesson emerges from the Sipapa case for the broader question of whether the government protects criminal or supporters? On one level, the arrest and trial show that a supporter can be prosecuted once his actions threaten diplomatically sensitive interests. But the years of overturned intimidation, the photographs with the president, the police escorts from riot scenes, and his assassination-based impunity also demonstrate that support for the regime can, for a long time, buy a de facto license to operate above the law. The NRM did not actively protect Sipapa after he was detained. Instead, it distanced itself with high-profile figures like Nalvisu leading the condemnation. Yet the system, a security apparatus that saw and did nothing, while an NRM-branded criminal terrorized opponents, ambiguously sheltered him so long as his crimes were politically tolerable. When Sipapa's victim pool expanded to include a well-connected foreign national, that tolerance evaporated overnight. The Sipapa story thus becomes a cautionary tale. The government does not openly endorse criminals simply because they wear the party West, but its silence during the early stages of their rampage provides a form of passive protection. In the hand, Sipapa learned that the label NRM supporter could shield him from low-stakes disorder, but it offered no immunity once his crimes became too large and too visible for the state to ignore. That selective accountability is perhaps the most unsettling reflection of all. And this is the lesson. NRM, if you are too criminal, visible to the public, they won't protect you even if you are a supporter. And that one, at times, is why many people argue that NRM is a good government. Thank you.